Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. There's a lot in the news about the southern border and whether we need a wall. Today's guest not only lived on the southern border, but he also worked there. His name is Fernando Beltran, the former head of the Border Patrol in Derby. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. How you doing?
Well, I've had you on here before.
Yes.
I think I've actually had you on since you've retired, but you've been on when you were active.
Right.
Have you been, now that you're retired, have you heard anything about the controversy on the southern border, or do you just ignore it?
Well, you know, I still have family down there on the
Right.
southern border, and you know, it's as far as like our as the organization goes, I still keep up. There's a lot of Facebook pages and stuff that keep you updated with what's going on down there. A lot of the agents are for the wall down there. There's some places where we depend on natural barriers like a river,
Right.
you know, but that river in a lot of places is so shallow that you don't even get your ankles wet when you walk across it. So I see a lot of protesting the wall. A lot of those protesters don't live on the southern border. You know, I know a lot of my the people I went to school with and stuff. As they're retiring, you know, they're leaving the border area and staying in Texas, for example, but going up to the hill country, you know, just which is 4 or 5 hours away from the border.
Right.
I mean, just because our checkpoints are strategically located, you know, inland from the border, and if aliens come across, as long as they don't go past the checkpoint, then the chances of them getting caught are slim and none, you know. So they're like neighborhoods, you know, they're just not what they used to be. You know, like you had a neighborhood where you grew up and you felt safe, and now it's the houses, people move away, or they move into a nicer neighborhood, and a lot of the aliens are moving into those homes and stuff, or they become rentals or whatever. And you know, I have friends down there, so you know, the crime is high, unemployment is high, so you know, it stands to reason that there'd be more crime and stuff. So,
How far from the border did you grow up?
I grew up. I don't know if you went directly to the river, it'd be like growing up here, you know, like in Derby, and Derby line being the border. I was probably 5 miles from the border.
Was illegal entries, was that a common thing when you were a young man?
When I was a kid, the economy in Mexico was, you know, kind of ran parallel to like, I remember as a kid, $1 was worth 8 pesos in Mexico.
Right.
You know, now $1 is worth like, they call it 200 pesos.
Right.
But it was $1 for 2,000 pesos, and then the government of Mexico printed more money and deducted a zero to make it 200. But I mean, their peso really, or their money really devaluated. So that's why the need, or I think that's when the people started coming over here to work, because it's just the economy in Mexico just could, you know, you couldn't support a family, you couldn't raise a family on what the wages are there. So you come here and you send money back, and you know, what you make here in a week is what you'd probably make there in a month.
Now, just a little bit of background about you is we've been friends now for a number of years. I've even written your story. As I'm fond of saying, is you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Not. You were actually born on the migrant worker circuit. I think if I recall right, you were born, what is it, Washington or Oregon? Oregon, while you were picking while you folks were picking strawberries.
Right. My parents were picking strawberries.
Right.
Yeah, I was born in Salem, Oregon. I have a brother that was born in Defiance, Ohio, a sister born in Ada, Minnesota. You know, migrant farm work means you follow crops.
Right.
You know, I know here in Vermont they like to use migrant farm workers to describe illegal aliens, but an illegal
Right.
alien is an illegal alien. You know.
I often think of you when I hear that, because so if they're here illegally and they're called migrant farm workers, what's the name for folks like you?
Well, like as I've told you before, you know, my dad is 77 years old, and he still works in the fields, you know. He's still considered a migrant farm worker. And there's a lot of families. Where I came from, you know, that the lower Rio Grande Valley of Texas, a lot of families that, you know, travel up north every year they work all summer, and then they come back home and live off of what they earn in the summer there. Industry isn't real. It's in the lower Rio Grande Valley, it's mostly agriculture.
Right.
There are some businesses coming in, you know, like, okay, I haven't been down there in, I mean, I go down to visit, but I haven't lived down there in about 15 years, so it's but it hasn't changed much, you know. A lot of the people that go to college there become educators, as far as being school teachers, or there's not a lot of industry down there. It's a lot of agriculture, you know, citrus and cattle and stuff.
Now, from friends and family that live down on the border region, what do you think? What do they think about the need for a wall?
Well, it's hard to say because we're in, you know, like I also worked in Arizona. In Arizona, it's just a desert. There's a 3-strand. When I worked down there, there was a 3-strand barbed wire fence, and that was the border, you know. And then there was some places, you know, where you're out of town and you're out in the middle of the desert, and there's just monuments. There'll be a monument here, and let's say another monument a couple miles, and that's.
Well, kind of like what you might get.
Well,
here in the Northeast.
you've seen the
England.
monuments here.
Yeah.
You know, well, it's the same monument, the same, you know, form, and they have a number on them, so you know which one you're at. You know, so there's no need for a fence. And even where there is a barbed wire fence, it was usually torn down, you know, or just corroded and busted. So out there, the problem was drive-throughs. People would just load up in a truck and drive through, and you know, we were chasing ghosts, you know. And in Texas, because of the river, and there's some places where there's cliffs on the river where, you know, where it isn't as easy to come across with a car or even walking, you know. How would you build a wall down there? You know, I don't. In the desert, it's one thing because it's just, hey, there's nothing here. We're building the wall, you know. But or a fence or
Right.
whatever it is. But when you follow the river, because there's a lot of farmers or ranchers down there that depend on the water from the river for their cattle, to they irrigate their crops. So the middle of the river is the boundary between the United States and Mexico, and the river starts in El Paso, and well, actually it starts near Pecos, New Mexico, the Rio Grande, and it comes down through El Paso, but the border starts there in El Paso all the way to Brownsville, Texas. So how do you build a fence in the middle of the river, you know, where if you're a farmer that has rights to the river water, you know, how do we not block you or your cattle from being able to go down there? So it's going to be a tough sell, you know. How are you going to do this? You know, how are you going to build this wall? Because if you have to build it on your property, well, there's going to be compensation for the ranchers and the farmers. But you know, once again, how do you get water? You got to have gates to open to have access to that. Have access for your cattle and stuff. So it's not something that's as easy as just saying let's build it and there it is, you know.
So if President Trump were to call you up and just say, well, we know you are an esteemed member of the U.S. Border Patrol, and everybody talks highly about you. And I would like to know your opinion. What would you tell the president?
Well, I mean, we have people talking right now about technology. So let's take care of this with technology. You know, it's like cameras and drones and what have you. All those things are great, and all the camera tells you, like if we had a camera somewhere and says, hey, look, here comes 100 people just entered. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we know that 100 people came in, but you know, now we have to have the boots on the ground to go chase them or catch those people. You know, and it's technology is not going to replace the boots on the ground. Right. You know, it's going to be a combination of technology. It's going to be of manpower and barriers. You know, I mean, there is a need for barriers down there. Like I said, there's a lot of vehicles that drive across, loaded with people, loaded with drugs. And the thing is that a lot of these countries that don't like us, you know, the skin color of a lot of the countries that don't like us, you know, they could mix in with Hispanics and easily come across on the southern border. You know, it's not hard to learn Spanish, and you know, and we have a need for something down there, whether it's you know, I always like the boots on the ground, the men out there working. I came from Laredo, Texas, and when I left there about 15, I left there in 05. We had a Laredo North station, had about 500 agents. Laredo South station, they're all in the same town. Laredo South station had about 400 agents. Laredo West station had about 250. So you're talking in one town, we had 1,000 agents. Right. You know, and then you move a little further north. There's another Cotula, Hebronville. Those are outstations that also probably had 150, 200 men each. You know, so there's a lot of people there working. So it's going to take more than just people. You know, the technology is always effective, but you have to have people to respond to those incursions. And you know, it's not an easy solution. It really isn't. You know.
So would you say some degree of walls and then technology, or?
Yeah, I mean, because there's a place where, let's say, well, we never have anybody come across here because the steep cliffs, the deep river. So you know that portion would not need a wall. You know, I mean, it's not completely impenetrable, but there's a defense there. That you know, because we have helicopters, we have airplanes, we have guys on horseback, on ATVs. I mean, all this stuff is down there. All this equipment is down there. It's being used. The spirit of the Corps of the agents is unbelievable. You know, I mean, they come to work every day. I mean, I know a lot of guys. I read a lot of our blogs, and there's a lot of guys out there that, you know, I mean, this isn't easy for them. Coming to work every day and not getting paid. There are some companies that work with you, like a lot of the home loans. You know, people will work with you as far as late payment, late fees, and stuff like that. You know, but then there's a lot of other stuff that doesn't. You know.
Yeah, that's right. You've lived through.
Well, I've lived through a few. Yeah.
Yeah, a few, because I remember during the Obama administration, you had to. I don't know how many days that one was.
We had one that was about 17 days. I mean, you know, in my career, I worked through 5 of them. Right. You know, in the duration of my career. So it's not something that didn't happen. You know, there's a lot of things that go on. You know, immigration has come to light is something that's become a political agenda. You know, out there. I always tell people that, you know, everybody, you know, jumps the family separation. In the 2 years I was in the service, we treated, family cases the same way for the last 32 years. So it's like our president just likes to, he talks about what he's going to do, but little known fact, there was Obama separated more families than any other president in history. He deported and separated families, more than anybody else. So it's kind of like, Trump just likes to talk about what he's doing and say, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then act on it. And everybody says, well, this is wrong. This is what, but it's been the same way for the last 30 years.
And I think the thing that's changed, and no matter whether you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, we really don't have news anymore. We have, it's like one side or another. A lot of people condemn the politicians. Well, there's enough to go around there. But I think everybody, no matter your political persuasion or anything, should really be concerned about the national media, because as far as I'm concerned, you can call it media, but it's not news. It's all, no matter where you stand, I find it's largely propaganda in one direction or the other. I listen to the BBC kind of to see what's really going on.
I tell my kids, because my kids, they get their news off the internet,
Right.
And I mean, you can find an argument for whatever the subject is. You can find an argument, for and against. I said, when I was a kid, I said we used to have a guy named Walter Cronkite. He read the news, and he had no opinion as to what you should. This is what's happening. These are the news. And and then he'd sign off, and and that was it. I mean, you had a lot of great news anchors that retired here within the past 10 years. And it seems that everybody that pops up now is some kind of a star, and it's like I mean, when we have LeBron James out there, I mean, the guy shoots baskets,
Yeah.
play basketball. Says, I don't really want to know what your stand is on a political issue, because, you're not a politician. I mean, like, it's nice to have money and be able to talk, and people want to listen to what you got to say. But I'm not one of those guys.
What's funny is because of my media presence in the sense of social media, because I have my Northland Journal. And I'm out there, I often get contacted by news outlets from around the country, and to some degree around the world. One day I even had the Daily Mail from England show up at my door. And oftentimes they're not necessarily looking to talk to me. They're trying to find somebody to talk to. Well, recently I had Reuters contact me, and it took me maybe a minute to realize that what this reporter was doing. And I says, I think you contacted the wrong person. They said, what do you mean? I said, I've listened to you, and I said, what you really want me to tell you is how bad the Border Patrol are up here and how people don't respect them. I said, well, I'm going to blow your story right now, and you probably won't want to use me, because the Border Patrol, the men who patrol, and I'm sure there must be some women along the Vermont border now. The men and women who patrol the border, I said, as far as I'm concerned, they're some of the best, the brightest, and just good people. And, well, our conversation ended relatively quickly, and they went on to find, and the same thing, to some degree, happened with the Washington Post, where when they called, I already knew they had the script all written. They just needed me to plug in some bad stuff about life on the border. Because you got to admit, over the years, when you were the commander up here, the agent in charge, I gave you credit where credit was due, and I also wrote things that were not. It wasn't necessarily glowing about you, as in the organization, but I think I was always fair. But I think a lot of the media now, they have, no matter what their opinion, they have an agenda and go, hey, who are these people trying to sneak across the border? From what you find when you were working the southern border, from what I'm hearing, they're all good, honest people who are out looking to make a living. Are there those people?
There are. I mean, I ran across people that you they want to come here to work, but in the same token, I ran across people that didn't want to come here to be. When you run into a guy that's got tattoos on the inside of his lip, on his eyelids, all tatted up in his face, and he says, "What are you coming here for?" I said, "Work." It's like, where are you going to work? Those are gang members. They're gang members trying to get with their gangs here to join whatever criminal enterprise they may have going. I mean, but I run across, guys where you can see their hands callous from being either a mason or just hard farm work. And they do want to come here to work, but that's not every person. There are down on the southern border. Any morning you'd go down to the port of entry, and you'd sit there, and you could count the kids coming over from Mexico by the thousands to load up on school buses that would come pick them up and take them to our school districts. Mm-hmm. Now, as a taxpayer, who pays for the school? Property taxes, for the most part, pay for schools. Now, all these kids were what they call a border crosser. They have a card, they can come over, and they come over to go to school here. They go to school for free. Now, the school districts get paid by the government on the number of kids you have. So the school district, they don't care where the kid is from. The people that pay the taxes, we're like, well, wait a minute, you're putting my kid in a classroom that's got 35, 40 kids, and you're saying we need to build more schools, which comes out of taxpayers, because we just have too many kids. So, well, a lot of those kids are coming in from Mexico. So a lot of the people down in Texas, for example, would want the kids that are coming in to pay some form of tuition, to go to school here. I mean, nobody's saying we don't want you to come to school here, but if you got to build new schools and all this money's coming out of your property taxes, then somebody else has to, so there's a lot of issues that that are up there. I've heard people talking about how a lot of the aliens that are in this country are overstays. Right. Well, overstays are people that come in to visit and they just never go back home. The problem is that, okay, we have a number of those people that came in. On the illegal aliens, we don't have a specific number, so because you don't know. It's like a saying that Border Patrol liked to use a few years ago. So you don't know what we don't know. How many people came across, how many people. I mean, there's estimates that for every one we catch, we lose 5. Right. For every one we catch, we lose 3. I mean, there's no specific, data. I mean, back in the old days, we used to say, well, we got footprint here for 15 people. We caught 3. So that means we lost 12. So that's where we get for every one guy you get, 4 get away from you. But, an agent up the road may catch them, or they may get caught someplace else. So it's the data's really, it's just a guess as to how many people that may be in here. So
how do we handle the whole immigration issue? Because there's a lot of people, who rail against our country, but then on the other hand, I'm thinking, well, if we're really that bad, why are so many people trying to come here? So what is the answer? Because to be realistic is some of the farmers and other businesses have come to rely on, because we are a country that has really kind of turned into, if you work is optional, in other words, there's people who could work who choose not to work, so thus they need these laborers, and unless we're going to start putting people.
There are a lot of programs, like like for example, in the Carolinas,
Right.
they do tobacco. You know, Virginia, West Virginia. There's a lot of tobacco grown out there. I mean, there might be some in Connecticut. You know, I mean, but in the Carolinas specifically, remember that they would recruit people to come in, and it was similar to the Bracero program where they recruited people. They get a special visa, and they would send buses down to Texas to pick these people up, bring them to work in North Carolina, and after the tobacco picking season, you know, was over, the people got back on the buses. They went back to Mexico, you know, and there was a need for it, a need for workers, and there was not enough workers, so they had this H program, and they would bring the people in to work. Now I know that JP did the same thing when they bring in people from the Caribbean somewhere to help, you know, do some of the work up here. You know, so there are programs out there. You know, people just need to, if it's like the dairy farmers that need something like that, then they should all get together and petition their.
But should it be easier for people to actually immigrate here and actually stay here? Or I don't know what the process really is.
I think a lot of people, like, you know, they have their homes. You know, they just want to make money to support what they have going. You know,
Right.
I don't think that everybody that comes here wants to come here to stay. I mean, there's a lot of people that come here. They send money back home. They work here. They send money back home to build a house. You know, or you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So it's like, so not necessarily that they want to come live here, but they just want to better themselves there.
Right.
And until there's a living wage in Mexico, where the people can come work and make a decent living so they can support a family there. I mean, I don't think that the influx of people coming here seeking employment is going to change much. You know, something has to be done there in order for you know, people want to have to. You got to make them want to stay home.
Right.
There's a reason for me. If I say, well, I could go to the United States and make, you know, $100 more a week than what I'm making here, it wouldn't be worth it to them. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
But if you're going to come over here to the United States and make, you know, 4 or 5 times in a week than you make there in a month, then that's a very hard attraction to overlook.
So why then, if we don't, how come we don't do more then for, you know, I'm not saying I would support it, but that isn't my place, is how come you don't go after the people hiring the
Well,
workers and the undocumented folks?
There is, we have laws on the books, you know, to do that, you know. A few, well, it's more than a few, 10 years or so ago, the Border Patrol used to enforce, you know, worksite enforcement. Right. You know, we go to businesses and inspect for I-9s,
Right.
and if we found people in violation of I-9s or hiring illegal aliens, they were fined. They were heavily fined. But, you know, the powers that be got together and said, well, that should fall to ICE. You know, they do these investigations on workers and employment, and the Border Patrol just strictly focuses on patrolling the border.
Right.
So that got taken away from us, you know, but we were the ones that were trained to do it.
Right.
You know, so we did what we used to call farm and ranch. We go out, there'd be a field, and the Border Patrol would just, you know, have a bunch of guys out there, and then we just sweep through the field, and, you know, people running all over the place, airplanes and helicopters, you know, trying to help us, you know, coordinate our efforts. And, you know, and you'd interview a lot of people, you know, and a lot of them were illegal aliens. They got picked up, and, you know, and we moved on, you know. And if we found that the employers were hiring people, you know, without regard to the law, then they were fined. They were heavily fined, and you know, trying to get them to comply. Now, the Border Patrol lost that, and I don't think, you know, as much as ICE had on their plate, you know, that they really work it the way they should. I mean, they focus more, and they have a lot of issues with trafficking. And it seems like, you know, you get stuck in that. You know, this is your focus, so there's not much more. I mean, they focus on drugs. I mean, they have so much on their plate. You know, it's just you know, it's not what one agency can do, you know, by itself. You know, there's so much stuff, so many things that we have to handle out there that, you know, I mean, it's...
Okay. All right, well, we only have a couple more minutes left. So what is the life of a retired Border Patrol man like? Because I understand you weren't very good at retirement.
No, I kind of had another retired guy, the ex-chief of police, Paul Duquette. Probably a couple of weeks after I retired, he recruited me to work down at Lamoille County with Sheriff Marcoux, Roger. And so I'm kind of doing some part-time stuff for him there. But every chance I get down to Kentucky to see my grandson.
Yeah, I noticed that, because you must be able... it appears that your car knows its way by now.
I can put it on cruise control and get down there in a day. You
got to admit, you know, you probably always heard that being a grandparent was actually better than being a parent, and it actually is. It is. I have 4 now, and it's, you know, sometimes I joke, if only you could skip over the dirty work of being a parent and have grandkids, because they're so much fun.
I've heard you say that before, and I've actually used that with my kids. I said, man, if I could have just skipped the kids and gotten the grandkid, and my kids all look at me like, Dad, like, what's up with that? So we weren't bad kids, and they weren't, you know.
No, mine don't even have a speeding ticket. But I think when you're a parent, I think sometimes you're so busy trying to make, whether it be ends meet, whether it be your profession, or just you don't actually get to notice some of the little things you get to notice as a grandparent.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. You know, like I spend a lot of time with my grandson, as much as I can. You know, and I think my daughter is like, no more trucks. He goes, Dad, the house is. I buy him all kinds of. He likes trucks, so I buy him Tonka trucks and trains and what have you. And my daughter, I actually bought him like a bouncy house.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Where are we gonna put this?" He goes, "This thing's so big that we can't." You know, I think it's still in a box, but yeah.
I know the feeling.
My wife's like, "Hey, you gotta," or my daughter talks to my wife, says, "You gotta tell Dad to stop." You know, and it's just kind of like, you know. Yeah. The other day she sent me a picture of him at play school with a little fire truck. And I sent her things like, "Hey, who makes that fire truck?" And she goes, "He doesn't need it."
Oh, I know the feeling. Hey, thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me.
And I don't know how many years we've known each other now, but it's always great to have you on. It's always great going out to eat. Hey,
I still remember you at the Price Chopper parking lot there.
Yeah, I didn't have. Yeah, and of course you weren't in uniform, and I didn't, because you know you see people out of place, and then we've been friends ever since.
Yep.
Okay, thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.